I was present when the galaxy learned that Earth had been given 3 days to live. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened aboard Helios Nexus, a diplomatic station so vast that entire cities existed within its rotating habitat rings. Hundreds of civilizations filled the Great Chamber. Ancient empires sat beside young republics. Trade alliances argued with military coalitions. Above them all stood one name that dominated every discussion: the Draxor Empire. For centuries, the Draxors had ruled vast regions of known space. Their fleets numbered in the tens of thousands. Entire sectors paid tribute to them. Few dared challenge their authority, and those who did rarely survived long enough to try again. When the council speaker activated the central display, silence spread across the chamber. The image of Earth appeared. Then the Draxor fleet. Thousands of warships surrounded my home system. A recording began. Supreme Marshal Cale Vorn stood on the bridge of his flagship. Earth has 3 days to surrender. His cold eyes stared into the camera. Refuse, and your world will be destroyed. The transmission ended. The chamber exploded into argument. Some delegates demanded surrender to save billions. Others warned that if Earth fell, every younger civilization would eventually face the same fate. I sat among the human delegation and listened. Around me, the galaxy debated humanity's future. Nobody asked what humanity planned to do. That would prove to be a mistake. The arguments continued for nearly an hour. From my seat beside the human delegation, I watched representatives from dozens of species rise one after another to offer opinions on Earth's fate. Most of them had never visited our world. Many had never spoken to a human. Yet all seemed eager to decide what we should do. The logical choice is surrender, declared a Varelian diplomat whose species had not fought a war in 6 centuries. A temporary loss of sovereignty is preferable to extinction. Several delegates signaled agreement. Others disagreed. If Earth submits today, a representative from the Court Dominion argued, then every developing civilization becomes vulnerable tomorrow. The Draxors will learn that threats are sufficient. The chamber descended into another wave of shouting. Above us, holographic projections displayed the Sol system. Tiny red markers represented Draxorian warships. There were thousands of them. More vessels than most species possessed in their entire military. No one seemed optimistic. I noticed something else. The older civilizations barely acknowledged the human delegation. Their attention remained fixed on the Draxors and on one another. To them, humanity was little more than a minor power caught in the path of a giant. Young, inexperienced, expendable. Then Ambassador Sarah Mitchell pressed the request panel on her desk. A small light appeared above our platform. The council speaker looked down. The representative from Earth requests permission to address the chamber. A few delegates exchanged amused looks. Others appeared surprised that humanity wished to speak at all. Permission was granted. The room slowly quieted. Ambassador Mitchell stood. She adjusted her uniform jacket and stepped toward the speaking platform with the calm confidence of someone attending a routine meeting rather than discussing the possible destruction of her species. I followed her with my eyes. Every delegate did. For the first time since the session began, the focus of the entire council shifted toward humanity. Mitchell reached the center platform. For several seconds she simply looked around the chamber. No notes, no prepared statement, no visible emotion. Then she spoke. The Draxors believe Earth has 3 days left. Her voice carried effortlessly through the hall. A few delegates leaned forward. Mitchell's expression never changed. Personally, she continued, I think they being optimistic. The chamber fell completely silent. No one laughed. No one moved. The words seemed to hang in the air between the stars projected above us. Then she added one final sentence. They gave Earth 3 days to surrender. A brief pause, and we smiled. Without offering any explanation, Ambassador Mitchell turned, walked back to her seat, and sat down. The silence that followed felt heavier than any argument. The silence lasted only a few seconds. Then the chamber erupted. Laughter rolled through the council hall like a tidal wave. Delegates shook their heads, exchanged amused glances, and openly mocked the statement. To them, humanity's response sounded less like confidence and more like denial. A bluff, one representative declared. They are trying to preserve their dignity, said another. The Draxor Empire commands over 800 conquered worlds, a third added. Perhaps the humans do not understand the scale of what they face. Around the chamber, agreement spread quickly. The older civilizations were particularly dismissive. They remembered the rise and fall of hundreds of species. They had witnessed rebellions, alliances, and wars stretching back thousands of years. Humanity had existed on the galactic stage for only a few decades. From their perspective, confidence was not impressive. It was naive. I remained seated beside Ambassador Mitchell while the debate resumed around us. What exactly did you mean? I asked quietly. She did not answer immediately. Instead, she continued watching the arguments unfolding throughout the chamber. Representatives spoke of surrender terms, occupation governments, population relocation, post-war administration. It was as though Earth had already lost. Finally, Mitchell leaned slightly toward me. Tell me something, Elias. Yes? How many people in this room know what happened in Nevada 35 years ago? I frowned. Almost none. Exactly. That answer raised more questions than it solved. Before I could ask another, a secure notification appeared on her desk display. For a brief moment, I caught a glimpse of the message. Sentinel status. Final phase authorized. Then the screen went dark. Mitchell's expression never changed. Far beyond Helios Nexus, thousands of light years away, Earth was preparing. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, hidden under layers of reinforced stone and classified infrastructure, a facility known as Sentinel Command had become the most active location on the planet. Rows of analysts monitored incoming intelligence. Military officers coordinated fleet movements. Engineers supervised systems that had remained secret for decades. No one panicked. No one discussed surrender. There was tension, certainly. But it was the tension of people waiting for a signal, not the fear of people awaiting execution. Large displays showed the position of every Draxorian vessel within the Sol system. Every movement, every transmission, every vulnerability. At the center of the command complex, a single status indicator changed from amber to green. Project Sentinel. Ready. After 35 years of preparation, humanity's plan was finally about to begin. I did not leave the council chamber when the session ended. Neither did most of the delegates. Groups formed throughout Helios Nexus as representatives exchanged theories about humanity's strange response. Some believed Ambassador Mitchell had been bluffing. Others suspected Earth possessed a hidden alliance. A few wondered whether humanity had simply accepted its fate and chosen defiance over surrender. Nobody considered the truth. Back on Earth, Sentinel Command operated beneath nearly 3 kilometers of mountain rock. The facility officially did not exist. Even many world leaders knew only fragments of its purpose. I stood before the main operations display alongside General Rebecca Hayes, Director of Project Sentinel. The room glowed with tactical projections, Draxorian fleet positions, communication routes, command hierarchies, every piece of intelligence humanity had gathered over the past 35 years. Final verification complete, an analyst announced. Sentinel network operating at 100% efficiency. General Hayes nodded. Proceed. The enormous display shifted. A new image appeared. An old photograph. At first glance it seemed unremarkable. A metallic wreck half buried in desert sand beneath a Nevada sunrise. Yet every person in the room understood its significance. 35 years earlier, long before humanity joined the Galactic Council, a damaged vessel had crashed in the Nevada desert. The craft was Draxorian. Officially, the Empire never learned what happened to it. Unofficially, it changed human history. Scientists spent decades dismantling the ship atom by atom. Engineers reverse-engineered its systems. Cryptologists decoded its databases. Military analysts studied every fragment of information it contained. The greatest discovery had not been a weapon. It had been knowledge. The vessel carried intelligence archives, military communications, command protocols, and encrypted records stretching back centuries. Humanity had quietly learned more about the Draxor Empire than most of its own citizens knew. Now that information was about to be used. General Hayes looked toward the rear of the room. "Bring him in." A side door opened. An elderly man entered carrying a worn leather briefcase. He looked completely out of place among the advanced technology surrounding us. Gray hair, weathered face, simple civilian clothing. Retired cryptologist Jack Turner had spent 27 years working on Sentinel before leaving government service to operate a small farm in Kansas. Now he had been called back. Jack placed his briefcase on the conference table. "Looks like we're finally doing it," he said. Hayes gave a small nod. The Draxors made the first move. Jack opened the case. Inside rested a single data module. 35 years of preparation condensed into something small enough to fit in one hand. The final phase of Sentinel had begun. 3 hours after Project Sentinel entered its final phase, Jack Turner boarded a diplomatic shuttle departing Earth. No escort accompanied him. No visible weapons were carried aboard. To any observer, the vessel appeared to be transporting exactly what the Draxors expected. A representative arriving to negotiate humanity's surrender. The massive Draxorian fleet remained in orbit throughout the Sol system. Thousands of warships surrounded Earth like a steel cage. At the center of that armada floated the Black Horizon, flagship of Supreme Marshal Kael'Vorn. The vessel was nearly 20 kilometers long. Entire cities could have fit within its armored hull. As Jack's shuttle approached, dozens of weapon batteries tracked his movement. A transmission arrived. "Identify yourself." Jack adjusted the communicator. "Jack Turner, representative of Earth." There was a pause. Then clearance was granted. The shuttle passed through layers of defensive screens before entering the enormous hangar bay of the Black Horizon. Rows of Draxorian soldiers waited. Each stood over 3 meters tall, clad in black combat armor. Their expressions suggested they expected a frightened diplomat. Instead, the shuttle door opened and a middle-aged farmer stepped onto the deck carrying a weathered briefcase. Several officers exchanged confused looks. This was not what they had anticipated. An escort commander approached. "You will follow us." Jack smiled politely. "Of course." Then he spoke again, in perfect Draxorian. The effect was immediate. Every officer froze. The language was notoriously difficult for outsiders. Even expert translators struggled with its complex military dialects. Yet Jack's pronunciation was flawless. Not merely fluent, native. One officer actually stopped walking. Another stared openly. The commander narrowed his eyes. "Where did you learn that language?" Jack adjusted his jacket. "Oh, here and there." The answer was intentionally vague. It did nothing to ease the growing discomfort among the escort. As they moved through the vast corridors of the flagship, Jack continued speaking casually in Draxorian. He commented on architectural details, quoted old military expressions, even referenced historical sayings abandoned centuries earlier. By the time they reached the command deck, word had already spread through multiple sections of the ship. The human was speaking like a Draxorian officer, and nobody understood how. The enormous doors opened. Beyond them stood Supreme Marshal Kael'Vorn, commander of the greatest military empire in the galaxy. He sat upon an elevated command platform overlooking hundreds of tactical displays. When his eyes settled on Jack Turner, the room became silent. For several long seconds, neither man spoke. Then Kael'Vorn finally broke the silence. "You have come to discuss surrender." Jack smiled. "No." The single word echoed across the bridge. And for the first time since entering the flagship, several Draxorian officers looked genuinely uneasy. Supreme Marshal Kael'Vorn studied Jack Turner in silence. Around the command deck, senior officers watched with growing suspicion. The human standing before them showed none of the fear they expected. He stood casually, one hand resting on his briefcase, as though he were visiting an old friend rather than the commander of an invasion fleet. "You refuse to surrender?" Kael'Vorn finally asked. I do. The Marshal leaned forward. Then you have traveled a long distance merely to witness the end of your species. Jack smiled slightly. Actually, Marshal, I came because I was curious. The bridge remained silent. Curious about what? Vorn asked. Jack glanced around the command deck. The condition of the Black Horizon. Beautiful vessel, by the way. Third-generation command architecture. Upgraded reactor systems. Reinforced shield relays after the disaster at Corin Reach. Several officers stiffened. That information was classified. Jack continued calmly. Though personally, I preferred the earlier designs. They were less efficient, but more elegant. The Marshal's expression darkened. How do you know about Corin Reach? Jack ignored the question. Instead, he began speaking about Draxorian history. The First Imperial Expansion. The War of Seven Crowns. Ancient military reforms. Forgotten royal traditions. Long-abandoned tactical doctrines. Every detail was accurate. Every date correct. Every name pronounced perfectly. As the minutes passed, unease spread across the bridge. Even senior officers struggled to remember some of the events Jack referenced. Yet the human recited them effortlessly. Meanwhile, throughout the Sol system, hidden operations were already underway. Deep space listening posts activated. Encrypted communications transmitted across hundreds of worlds. Sleeper networks embedded inside Draxorian territory received coded messages. Human vessels that officially did not exist quietly moved into position. The real operation had begun long before Jack boarded his shuttle. He was merely the distraction. Back on the Black Horizon, Kale Vorn finally slammed a fist onto his command console. The sound echoed across the bridge. Enough. The room fell silent. You did not come here to discuss history. No. You did not come here to negotiate. No. Then why are you here? Jack looked down at his wristwatch. A simple mechanical watch, the kind rarely seen in an age of advanced technology. He checked the time, then looked back up. For the first time, his smile widened. You gave Earth 3 days. Vorn's eyes narrowed. Jack closed the watch. A soft click echoed in the silence. Then he spoke. You won. Last 3 seconds. For a fraction of a moment, nobody moved. Nobody understood. Then every alarm aboard the Black Horizon activated simultaneously. The bridge exploded into chaos. Red warning lights flooded the bridge of the Black Horizon. Officers rushed to their stations as alarms screamed from every console. Tactical displays flickered. Entire sections of the command network began shutting down without explanation. What is happening? Kale Vorn demanded. A communications officer looked up, panic visible on his face. We lost contact with Fleet Command. Another voice followed. Shield systems are failing. Then another. Primary weapons offline. The bridge erupted into overlapping reports. Engine control is unresponsive. Navigation systems disconnected. Power fluctuations across all sectors. Backup networks not responding. Kale Vorn rose from his command throne. Restore control immediately. No one answered. Because they couldn't. Across the bridge, displays went dark one by one. Jack Turner remained standing exactly where he was. Calm, patient, watching. A tactical officer suddenly pointed toward the central holographic display. Marshal, the star map changed. Red markers representing Draxorian warships began disappearing. Not because they were destroyed. Because they were shutting down. One vessel after another. Hundreds. Then thousands. Across the entire Sol system. Engines powered off. Weapons deactivated. Shield generators collapsed. Communication arrays fell silent. The greatest invasion fleet in Draxorian history was becoming a collection of drifting metal hulks. Without a single shot being fired. Back on Earth, Sentinel Command erupted into controlled activity. Technicians monitored incoming telemetry from every Draxorian vessel. Green indicators spread across the giant display. Project Sentinel was working exactly as intended. 35 years earlier, hidden inside the crashed reconnaissance ship recovered in Nevada, humanity had discovered something far more valuable than technology. A master access architecture. Every Draxorian military system was built upon the same core network principles. For decades, human cryptologists had studied those principles, learned them, improved them, and ultimately built a signal capable of speaking directly to the Empire's own machines. The Sentinel signal, not a virus, not a weapon, a command. The Draxorian fleet wasn't malfunctioning. It was obeying. Back aboard the Black Horizon, Cale Vorn stared at the tactical display in disbelief. Thousands of ships, gone, neutralized, helpless. The entire invasion force had ceased functioning in less than 10 seconds. Jack checked his watch again. 3 seconds was generous. For the first time in his military career, Supreme Marshal Cale Vorn felt something unfamiliar. Fear, because he finally understood the truth. Humanity had never been preparing to fight the Draxor Empire. Humanity had been preparing to control it, and the operation was only beginning. Far beyond the Sol system, across hundreds of occupied worlds, encrypted signals hidden for decades suddenly activated. Resistance cells awakened. Sleeper networks received orders. The Draxorian Empire was about to discover that its greatest weakness had been exposed 35 years ago in a Nevada desert. The news spread across the galaxy faster than any official report could follow. At first, nobody believed it. The Draxor Empire had spent centuries building a reputation of invincibility. Entire civilizations had surrendered at the mere appearance of its fleets. The idea that an invasion force containing thousands of warships could be neutralized without a battle sounded impossible. Yet evidence kept arriving. Ship logs, sensor recordings, emergency transmissions. Every source confirmed the same unbelievable fact. The first Imperial Expeditionary Fleet was dead in space. Not destroyed, disabled, helpless. On Helios Nexus, the Galactic Council reconvened within hours. I stood beside Ambassador Mitchell as the chamber filled once again. This time, however, the atmosphere had changed completely. The delegates who had mocked humanity days earlier now spoke in hushed voices. Many avoided looking directly at us. Others stared openly. Fear and curiosity had replaced amusement. At the center of the chamber, Council Speaker Thalen displayed the latest intelligence reports. Images appeared one after another. Draxorian battleships drifting powerless, command vessels unable to maneuver, entire formations floating silently around Earth. No wreckage, no explosions, no casualties, just defeat. The distinction disturbed everyone. Destroying a fleet was understandable. Neutralizing one without violence was something else entirely. A representative from the Valari Union rose first. Is the information accurate? It is, Thalen replied. Another delegate stood. How many ships were affected? All of them. The answer sent murmurs through the chamber. Then new reports arrived. The situation was escalating. Across Draxorian territory, resistance movements were becoming active. Occupied worlds that had remained silent for generations suddenly erupted in coordinated uprisings. Governors disappeared. Military headquarters lost communication. Planetary defense systems switched allegiance. Entire sectors were slipping beyond Imperial control. Someone had planned this. Someone had spent years preparing. The realization spread through the chamber like a disease. Humanity's victory at Earth was not the beginning of the operation. It was merely the signal. A Korth delegate slowly turned toward our platform. How long have you been preparing this? Ambassador Mitchell folded her hands calmly. A while. The answer was technically correct. It was also terrifying. As more intelligence arrived, the scale of the crisis became impossible to ignore. The Draxor Empire was not collapsing because of military defeat. It was collapsing because humanity had reached into its foundations and pulled out the support beams. And for the first time in centuries, hope returned to worlds that had forgotten the meaning of the word. Throughout the galaxy, people began celebrating. But inside the council chamber, nobody celebrated. Because they were all asking the same question. If humanity could do this to the Draxor Empire, what else could humanity do? The Draxor Empire did not collapse in a day. Empires never do. They fracture slowly, then all at once. For weeks, reports flooded every major communication network in known space. Worlds that had endured centuries of imperial occupation suddenly declared independence. Planetary governors found their authority ignored. Garrisons surrendered when their supply chains disappeared overnight. The most shocking detail was not the speed of the collapse. It was the lack of resistance. Without functioning command systems, the Empire's vast military machine became a collection of isolated units. Entire fleets drifted in orbit awaiting orders that never arrived. Commanders who had spent their lives obeying imperial directives suddenly found themselves alone. Many chose surrender. Others simply went home. On Helios Nexus, the council chamber remained in continuous session. Every day brought more unbelievable news. Every day brought new questions. And every day, humanity answered almost none of them. I sat beside Ambassador Mitchell as delegate after delegate demanded explanations. How many resistance cells did humanity establish? No answer. How many imperial systems were compromised? No answer. How long did Project Sentinel exist? No answer. The silence frustrated many representatives. It frightened even more. Then came the question everyone truly wanted answered. A Solari historian rose from her seat. If the Draxor Empire is finished, what happens now? The chamber became quiet. At last, Ambassador Mitchell stood. For a moment, every eye in the council focused on her. The galaxy expected a declaration, a victory speech, perhaps even the announcement of a new human-led order. After all, humanity now possessed the leverage to seize enormous territory. Entire sectors lacked leadership. Hundreds of worlds would willingly accept human protection. The opportunity was unprecedented. Mitchell looked around the chamber. Then she spoke. Nothing happens. Confused murmurs spread immediately. The historian frowned. Nothing? Correct. Mitchell's voice remained calm. Earth will not annex Draxorian territory. The chamber fell silent. We will not occupy imperial worlds. Several delegates exchanged stunned looks. We will not establish a human empire. Now the silence became complete. Many representatives simply stared. The possibility had never occurred to them. History taught a simple lesson. When one great power fell, another replaced it. That was how the galaxy worked. Yet humanity appeared determined to ignore the rule entirely. The historian finally found her voice. Then what do you want? For the first time, Mitchell smiled. A genuine smile, not the cold expression she had worn during the crisis. We want exactly what we wanted before the Draxors arrived. She paused. To protect our home. Across the chamber, hundreds of delegates sat motionless. The answer sounded simple, yet somehow it was the most unsettling thing humanity had said since the crisis began. Because a species capable of toppling an empire, and choosing not to replace it, was something the galaxy had never encountered before. The official surrender of the Draxor Empire took place 8 months later. There was no grand ceremony, no victory parade, no fleets assembled above conquered worlds. The event occurred inside a modest conference chamber on Helios Nexus, witnessed by representatives from hundreds of civilizations and transmitted across known space. I stood behind Ambassador Mitchell as the final Imperial delegation entered. At their head walked Supreme Marshal Cale Vorn. He looked older, not physically, something deeper. The certainty that had once defined him was gone. For centuries, the Draxor Empire had believed itself permanent. Every generation had inherited the same assumption. The empire would endure forever. Now it was ending. Vorn approached the central table and placed a data crystal before the council speaker. The Imperial Senate has voted unanimously, he said. His voice was steady. The Draxor Empire formally dissolves its authority over all occupied territories. A silence followed, not celebration, reflection. Everyone understood they were witnessing the end of an era. The empire that had dominated the galaxy for 8 centuries ceased to exist with a single statement. One by one, former member worlds reclaimed their sovereignty. Colonies became independent nations. Sector governments established local councils. Trade routes reopened. Military checkpoints vanished. Across hundreds of systems, Populations emerged from generations of imperial rule and began rebuilding their futures. The transition was not perfect. Some conflicts occurred. Old grievances resurfaced. Yet the chaos many had feared never arrived. Humanity quietly assisted where requested. Engineers restored infrastructure. Medical teams supported recovering worlds. Diplomats mediated disputes. Human fleets protected shipping lanes. Nothing more, nothing less. Eventually, representatives from dozens of liberated civilizations gathered to discuss a new framework for cooperation. The result became known as the Stellar Reconciliation Alliance. Unlike the Empire, membership was voluntary. Unlike the Empire, no single world ruled it. Earth joined as a founding member. Not as leader, as partner. Years later, when journalists asked Ambassador Mitchell whether humanity regretted refusing imperial power, she gave the same answer every time. No, the galaxy had expected conquerors. Instead, it received neighbors. And somehow that remained far more difficult for many civilizations to understand. Far from the council chambers and diplomatic negotiations, Jack Turner returned to Kansas. His farm looked exactly as it had before the crisis. Cornfields stretched beneath wide skies. A weathered porch faced the horizon. Most visitors saw only an elderly farmer tending crops and repairing fences. Few realized they were speaking to the man who had walked aboard the most powerful warship in the galaxy and ended an empire with a smile. Jack preferred it that way. The work was finished. History could handle the rest. The galaxy expected revenge. That became obvious within days of the Draxorian fleet's collapse. On Helios Nexus, emergency sessions continued almost without interruption. Delegates arrived carrying reports from liberated worlds, intelligence updates, and increasingly desperate predictions about what humanity would do next. Most of those predictions were dark. Some believed Earth would seize control of former imperial territories. Others expected humanity to dismantle every remaining Draxorian military force. A few feared something far worse. For 35 years humanity had hidden capabilities capable of toppling the most powerful empire in known space. If those capabilities were now turned outward, who could possibly stop them? The question haunted every discussion. I heard it whispered in corridors. I heard it debated in council chambers. I heard it from diplomats who had once laughed when Earth was threatened. What does humanity want? No one seemed to know. Meanwhile, across former Draxorian space, entire worlds were celebrating. Imperial governors were removed from power. Occupation fleets surrendered without orders. Political prisoners walked free for the first time in generations. Statues of emperors fell. Flags changed. For many civilizations, it felt like the end of a long night. Yet while the galaxy celebrated, Earth remained strangely quiet. No fleets advanced beyond their assigned positions. No territorial claims were announced. No demands were issued. Human vessels protected evacuation routes, restored communication networks, and delivered humanitarian aid to liberated systems. Nothing more. Weeks later, the Council finally summoned Ambassador Sarah Mitchell to answer the question everyone was asking. The chamber was packed, every seat occupied, every platform filled. Speaker Thalen rose. Representative Mitchell, he said carefully, the galaxy wishes to understand humanity's intentions. The room became silent. Mitchell stood. For a moment she simply looked around the chamber. Then she spoke. We have no intention of ruling anyone. Confused murmurs spread immediately. Mitchell continued. Earth will not claim Draxorian territory. The murmurs grew louder. We will not establish an empire. Now delegates openly exchanged surprised looks. Some appeared relieved. Others looked suspicious. One representative finally stood. If humanity does not seek power, he asked, then why did you prepare for all of this? Mitchell's expression softened slightly. Because someone threatened our home. The answer was simple, yet it silenced the entire chamber. For the first time, the galaxy began to understand. Humanity had not spent 35 years preparing to conquer the stars. Humanity had spent 35 years ensuring that no one could ever conquer Earth. And there was a profound difference between those two things. The question of humanity's future remained unanswered for months. Even after Ambassador Mitchell's statement before the Council, most civilizations struggled to believe it. History had taught the galaxy a simple rule. When one empire falls, another rises to replace it. That was how power worked. That was how it had always worked. Yet Earth continued to ignore every opportunity placed before it. Entire sectors requested human administration. Former imperial worlds offered military treaties that would have effectively made them protectorates. Several governments openly proposed placing humanity at the head of a new galactic authority. Every proposal received the same response: no. I witnessed one such meeting on Helios Nexus. Representatives from more than 60 liberated worlds had gathered in one of the station's largest diplomatic halls. The atmosphere was respectful, but there was also uncertainty. Many of these civilizations had spent centuries under Draxorian rule. Freedom was unfamiliar to them. A Solari delegate stood first. If Earth will not rule, she asked, who will maintain order? Another representative immediately added his voice. The Empire is gone. Someone must fill the vacuum. Murmurs of agreement spread throughout the chamber. Ambassador Mitchell waited until the room quieted. Then she rose. No. The single word echoed through the hall. Several delegates looked confused. Mitchell continued. The purpose of defeating the Empire was not to replace it. A holographic star map appeared behind her. Hundreds of worlds glowed across the display. For centuries, too many civilizations believed peace required domination. The map slowly rotated, first by the strong, then by the stronger, and eventually by the strongest. Her gaze moved across the room. Humanity rejects that idea. The chamber became silent. We did not spend 35 years preparing for this moment so that we could sit on another throne. The words carried more weight than any speech she had ever delivered. Because everyone in the room understood what humanity had given up: the power to rule the galaxy. A power most species would have seized without hesitation. Mitchell folded her hands behind her back. What we propose instead is cooperation. The display changed again. Military alliances, trade routes, mutual defense agreements, shared governance structures. Not an empire. A partnership. A long silence followed. Then, slowly, delegates began nodding. Not because they fully understood humanity. They didn't. Perhaps they never would. But for the first time since the fall of the Draxor Empire, the galaxy began to see another possible future. One built not on fear, but on choice. The Stellar Reconciliation Alliance was officially founded 2 years after the collapse of the Draxor Empire. I attended the signing ceremony on Helios Nexus. Unlike the coronations of emperors or the declarations of conquest that filled galactic history, there was nothing grand about it. No military parade crossed the station's vast observation decks. No fleets assembled in orbit. No victory banners hung from the crystal towers. The absence felt intentional. Hundreds of delegates gathered inside the Hall of Accord, a circular chamber overlooking the stars. Representatives from liberated worlds sat beside former Draxorian governors. Species that had spent centuries as enemies now occupied neighboring seats. For many, the moment felt unreal. A century earlier, such a gathering would have been impossible. The Alliance Charter rested on a transparent pedestal at the center of the room. One by one, delegates approached and signed. When Ambassador Sarah Mitchell added Earth's signature, the chamber remained silent. Not because anyone doubted humanity's importance. Quite the opposite. Everyone understood that the alliance existed largely because humanity had made it possible. Yet Earth had demanded no special authority, no permanent leadership position, no military control, no privileges beyond those granted to every member. The gesture unsettled many civilizations more than conquest ever could. Power, after all, was easy to understand. Restraint was not. After the ceremony, I stood beside a large observation window overlooking the station's exterior docks. Thousands of ships moved through the darkness beyond the glass. A young Solari historian approached me. May I ask a question? Of course. She hesitated. Why did humanity refuse? I knew exactly what she meant. The empire, the throne, the opportunity. I watched the distant ships for a moment before answering. Because Earth already had what it wanted. She frowned slightly. A galaxy? I shook my head. A home. The historian considered that answer carefully. Across the stars, worlds were rebuilding. Trade routes reopened. Former slave worlds governed themselves. Children grew up without fear of imperial occupation fleets appearing in their skies. For the first time in generations, the future belonged to them. And far away, on a quiet farm in Kansas, Jack Turner returned to the life he had left behind. Most of his neighbors never learned what he had done. That suited him perfectly. Corn still needed planting. Fences still needed repairs. History could take care of itself. Jack had never wanted to be remembered. He had only wanted Earth to survive. And it had. Many decades later, the Sol crisis was studied in every major university across the galaxy. Historians debated how humanity had defeated the Draxor Empire. Some claimed it was technology. Others argued it was strategy. Neither explanation felt complete. A Solari historian named Valen eventually offered a different conclusion. Her final publication became famous across hundreds of worlds. It ended with a simple observation. Humans prepare while others celebrate. Humans study while others boast. Humans remain patient while others rush toward victory. According to Valen, the Draxors lost long before their fleet entered the Sol system. They lost the moment they assumed humanity was unprepared. For 35 years, humans had quietly gathered knowledge, built contingencies, and waited. When the Empire finally arrived, Earth did not panic. Earth executed a plan. The Draxors thought they were delivering an ultimatum. In reality, they were stepping into a trap decades in the making. The galaxy never forgot that lesson. Power mattered, technology mattered, but patience mattered more, and from that day forward, whenever a civilization underestimated humanity, someone would inevitably repeat the same words. The Draxors gave Earth 3 days to surrender. And humanity smiled.